Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. My name is Valerie Hope, and I am your host and your coach for Time to Come Alive. This is a weekly opportunity for you to get plugged in with conversation that will help you become either more conscious of oneself. You also have the opportunity to connect even better to other people around you and ultimately be more creative in the world. Every week, as you know, we have the wonderful benefit and opportunity and blessing of having a really fantastic guest to have a great conversation with. And today, I can't wait to introduce my special guest to you because I just so enjoy chatting with her. But in order for us to prepare for our conversation, a couple things I think would be really important to think about. It's called Starting Over. This episode is actually the 50th episode of Time to Come Alive that I've done this year. So I'm so excited, first of all, to have hit this milestone. And I believe in a day would be a full year since these conversations have begun. And so looking forward to what's coming up next year. So I think it's apropos that our topic is really about how to reset, how life has sometimes taken on journeys that we didn't mean to end something, but something ended, and yet we have to start again or start something afresh. And I can't wait for us to think more about what that means. So to put us in the space and the frame of mind for this conversation, I want you to think back through this past year. See how far back you can go throughout this year and point to all those moments where you've started something and perhaps things were going along and maybe they faded. Maybe it ended abruptly. Whether that was a diet, like many of us in the beginning of the year, perhaps it was a relationship, perhaps there was a job or some sort of responsibility that you had, maybe children went off to college. Think of all the things that you've started this past year that may have ended either by fading out or by ending abruptly. And where that has put you today. Where are you in the space of either starting again, restarting, or perhaps starting something new? And that's where I want our conversation to, where we want to play a little bit. I just want to take a moment to introduce this guest, LaRue Eppler. LaRue, I have to tell you, and I think I may have shared this with you before, I've heard your name for so many years, and I'm saying years, probably at least 2-3 years. Oh, LaRue Eppler, have you heard of LaRue Eppler? Have you talked to her? Have you heard her speak? And a lot of the people that I mentioned it are people who I respect, who I know really, appreciate and listen to interesting people. So I'm like, no, I've never heard of this woman. And I was so thrilled to hear that one Sunday you were going to be a guest speaker at my church. And so much so that I volunteered to be the one making the announcements, because that's the person that gets to sit next to the guest. And I was like, "Ooh, I'm going to have special access." Turned out, for whatever reason, something didn't quite work in the scheduling, and you weren't able to make your appearance. And I was a little bit bummed. So much so that Reverend Karen Romasan, bless her heart, sent an email introducing the two of us, which I thought was really above and beyond, because I never requested that she go above and beyond and introduce. It was just one of those experiences that I was like, oh, and you responded so quickly. And then I did get a chance to see you speak. And I think the best part of that whole story is the fact that you and I spent like 2 hours just talking about life. And I'm just so thrilled that, first of all, that we got to meet in person, that the LaRue Eppler that had been bandied about for a couple of years is in the flesh here on Time to Come Alive. Welcome.
Well, thank you. Gosh, you made me feel important, Valerie. That is
You are.
amazing. I'm honored to be here. Thank you so much. I loved meeting you live and in person when we got to talk for those 2 hours. It was such a rich conversation. Wow. So when you invited me to be here today, I knew I wanted to be here because I knew it would be a deep conversation. At least I hope that's what we have here today and useful. But thank you. I'm honored. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Now, obviously, that was my experience of you. There's so much more that you offer to the world, and obviously that your name is bandied about in these circles. Can you share with us a little bit about who you are, what you do that makes you so impactful?
Wow. Well, I've been this past June 26th, I celebrated 30 years being in the quote coaching industry. I call myself a personal growth facilitator, and I work primarily one-on-one, and have trained people how to use my specific diagnostic and healing methodology to help people have rapid change in their lives. And I've stopped teaching for a few years, but I'm going to start it back in 2020, which I'm really excited about. And I don't know how I've been so impactful. I mean, I hope it's because I've made a difference in their lives, that when they come to me, they get results, or when they're in my presence, I hope they feel loved and heard and cared for. Maybe I should ask people. I don't know, but thank you for that. I'm honored to think that people think that.
I feel that way, and we've only interacted a couple of times. And so I whatever it is you do, whatever that magic LaRue vibe that you're giving off, it's definitely having an impact on people. Because like I said, every single person that I spoke to about you had some really positive, glowing things to say about who you are as a person or the information that you bring forth. So I'm curious about, and you and I chatted a little bit about this before, but I want to bring in everybody on this journey with us. Tell us a little bit about where you started, where you come from, and where has that taken you over the last few years that matters to you.
Yeah, well, what matters to me is that people living their full potential. I mean, I love the name of your show. It's Time to Come Alive, or Time to Come Alive. I mean, it is time for people to come alive. It really, really, really is. So great title and great mission that you're on. And I believe that, there is so much potential within each of us that is not tapped, and in myself as well. Like I feel it. I feel that kind of restlessness in there, like there's more for me to express and experience and know of myself. And how I got on this journey was actually after the birth of my son. I had postpartum depression for 3 years. It was horrific. And so I know depression. And excuse me. And so I went on a journey to heal myself. But it happened, the journey started when I was going to take my life. And I had planned my death. I had planned how, and I'd planned the day. And no sooner had I chosen the day that a voice inside me, I can't remember if it was a voice or a thought, but I knew it was not an ordinary thought or an ordinary voice. And it said, if you take your life, your son is going to be raised by the same people who raised you, and you haven't turned out very well. And I never really thought about the impact on my son. And but it hit me, and I loved my baby. I mean, I didn't want to leave my baby. I loved him. He was the most precious thing to me. I was just in such pain. I didn't really want to die. I wanted the pain to die. Yeah. And that was just my immature mind, and depressed mind that was thinking the way to do it was to take my life. Fortunately, there was a spiritual intervention through that voice or that thought or whatever that said what it did. And I remember sitting there and I went, my only option is to get well. And I remember I didn't know what well looked like or how to find help or whatever, but it was the only option. And something very, very powerful happens in the universe and in our brains when we make a decision like that, where there's no other options. The universe, God, whatever you want to call, some people call it God, some people call it universe, it starts putting people, places, and things and resources in your path that otherwise wouldn't have been there, or you wouldn't have seen or recognized without that decision. And so I started having dreams and things, and eventually I ended up learning about a technology that could get into my unconscious mind and find the beliefs that were creating my problems, my blocks, my failures, my depression, and changed it quite rapidly and put me on the path that I'm on today. And when I found this technology, I knew, because I was such a mess, and it helped me. I mean, I literally 4 months later was not the same human. I felt like I had been reborn. And I knew that if it could help me, it could have worked for anyone. And I opened up an office and started working with people. And that's been 30 years ago.
Wow.
And I've never advertised. It's been all word of mouth. And I've had a full practice for 30 years.
Well, there's that impact that we were talking about earlier, clearly. I find it really fascinating that you said that the journey started when you decided to take your life, to end your life. And I'm curious about how you said that and why you said it that way. What was it about?
Go ahead. No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. What was it about that particular moment? Clearly, you made a choice not to, right? Because of the impact it would have on your son. But when you say the journey started there, what did that particular moment in time do that nothing else, no other intervention had done?
That's a great question. For me, it was a moment that was beyond my figure it out mind. It was a spiritual experience. I now know that it was a divine intervention, whatever you want to call that I could see something I had not seen before, and I knew it in my being, not in my head, not in my thinking, but I felt it in my whole being, that the only option is to get well. It was from head to toe in every cell of my body. Very hard to describe things like that, but it was what I would call a full body knowing.
Full body knowing.
And a full soul knowing. And the same happened when I found the healing methodology that was going to heal me. I had the same response. I went to an introductory evening, and they used me as the demo that night, and I had a profound experience. And I left there that night going, this is my calling. This was what I was put on this earth to do. And I knew it, and no one could talk me out of it. They tried to talk me out of it. They're going, oh my God, you're going to do that, and this is going to happen, and that's going to happen. You think you're going to make a living. And I knew it. I just knew it. I had no proof. I knew it in my being.
I love this part of the conversation. I mean, I love all of the conversations we've had, but I think this is something that doesn't get talked about as often as we could. There's something about knowing, right? I remember hearing, and I can't remember exactly it was a meditation workshop that I attended, and they talked about there's 3 levels of knowing, right? There's I read something, I heard something, I saw something, knowing, right?
Yeah.
There's someone told me about it, knowing, right?
Yeah.
Somebody that I trust, someone that I respect told me. And then the real knowing, though, when knowledge really is the profound shifting agent or change agent in our lives, is when we experience something.
Exactly.
That's the form of knowing that I feel like you're pointing to.
Precisely.
Yeah, but here's the part that I wonder may not be talked about very much is how do we get out of that figuring it out mode that you mentioned into do I really know this, or is there something that can come through me to share, to send me in the right path? How do you make that distinction?
Yeah, exactly. Because we think we know a lot of times, right? I mean, I know,
we know. Not that I know a lot, but I do
know
think that.
someone's hard-headed or stubborn, right? Like we know, but that's not the kind of knowing we're talking about. And it's another really great question, Valerie. How do we make that shift from the figured out mind to the knowing? The Buddhists and the monks and, Christ, I think they've all been trying to teach us that for centuries, right?
Don't you get it?
Right. And I think there are many ways to get there, and it's different for different people. Some people meditate, some people pray, where you're able to somehow move into that, bringing your awareness from up here down below the neck into your body. And the best way to start moving that awareness, I've found for myself, is breathing, because breath connects you to feeling. Right? And being in touch. I don't mean just necessarily that connects you to emotions. It certainly can, but it connects you to your body awareness.
Sensations. Yeah.
Sensations. If you don't have an awareness of what's going on from the neck down, and you only know the thoughts racing through your head, it's hard to be in touch with that. So breath will take you there. Mm-hmm. And you think about this, Valerie, is that breath, here's how I think about breath. Breath is life. A few minutes, few seconds, you're dead. You can't go long without oxygen, right? And so without breath, you die. So to me, breath is life. Well, where does life come from? Well, I believe it comes from God. And again, the universe. Again, I don't think God is offended if we call it the universe or whatever, a monkey. It doesn't really care. It comes from wherever it comes from. And so I'll just call it God. It comes from God. And so when we are breathing, we're literally breathing and being God within us, particularly if we're conscious about it.
Yeah.
I
can see that what you said I think is very indicative of how I approached meditation, because the meditation style that I learned was Vipassana meditation, which is really all about sensations and identifying what our body's feeling, if there's a tingle, if there's a tightness, if there's some chill or something.
Yes.
And we also live in a culture where it's so prevalent that any sensation that is deemed unpleasant is muted right away, whether that's through distraction, whether that's through some sort of, some kind of drug or some chemical that we, take into our body. So I'm curious about how do you see that play out for you? Now, obviously you had this full body knowing experience. How did you know to just stay there, to stay present with it and not let it maybe take
I didn't stay present with it. I couldn't hold that experience in my body 24/7. It actually was pretty fleeting. Okay. The experience of it, but the experience was so deep and so profound, it was life-changing. I knew I had to stay on the path. That's all I can say. When we see something from, I'm just going to call it, I don't know what to call it, from that level, a spiritual level, it's beyond the everyday egoic seeing, personality seeing. Truly my being saw something. It doesn't go away. I mean, I've had other experiences in the last 30 years where I've had those experiences and they never leave me. I don't mean that I don't get hooked by fear or whatever, but I can return to them. Just the remembering of it can reset me. I remember at one time, my first 6 months in business, I'm going, oh my God, am I going to make it financially? I was terrified. I had a 3-year-old and I'm like, am I going to make it? And I was driving down the freeway in Dallas going into my office and just like terrified, because it was like my first 3 or 4 months in business. Even though I knew to do it, my head would still scare me. And so driving down LBJ freeway here in Dallas, I remember, just having this feeling of peace come over me. And the words came to me, all is well. And there was such a profound peace. And it lasted for maybe seconds, But anytime, even 30 years later, when I get afraid, I go back to that moment on the freeway, driving my car, having that, and I would just repeat to myself, and I still do it to this day, all is well. And I can feel some level of peace, not as profound as on the freeway that day, but it's a reminder because I've made it for 30 years, right? Like it was well, all is well. And so if it didn't lie to me then, why would it lie to me now?
Very true. And I think you've also pointed to something really important, that sense. I think that's the one sense that we should be really mindful of at any decision that we made. And I think Marianne Williamson said this in some of her talks, that sense of peace that comes with a decision that's made, that comes with a thought that we have, is the tell. That's the sign that we're on the right track, that all is well, or that all will turn well, right? Whatever it is that we're struggling with.
Yes.
If we can hold on just enough to search to see, okay, am I feeling at peace with this? And peace, not like righteous. Yeah, got that. But peace has
deep. Yeah.
That is fascinating. That is fascinating. And I'm curious, and I know this may not have anything to do with what we said we wanted to talk about, but I'm really curious about what is it about in our society, maybe your perception or your opinion on this, that it feels like when we know something intellectually somehow, that we now need to, that our knowing is not sufficient. Now it's time to share with everybody or to convince or change other people's knowing. Do you have any thoughts around that?
Well, I do have some thoughts about that. And I think it could be a multifaceted answer. I mean, I think it could be a little same, a little different for different people, is that we live in a culture that, particularly here in the US, and, and I have friends and clients around the world, and a lot of them in England and Australia, and those countries are very similar to what I'm talking about here, is that we live in a culture where we think we have to look good, we have to have certain degrees, where there's a certain standard that's been set for us as to how to be, how to look, how to whatever. And as long as we are trying to live up to those standards, we can't live true to our own heart and our soul. There's no room to hear the voice and to feel the peace.
Mm. And so when you're talking to your clients, for example, how do you know that someone is struggling with that whatever they're dealing with really has to do with meeting some sort of arbitrary or artificial standard?
Most people
Yeah.
99.9% of the people are not, it's just most people.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still, even though I've been very, conscious and becoming more and more conscious all the time over the years, I still look at when I'm thinking of making a decision or I'm, whatever in my life, I'm going, is this really my original thoughts or is this coming from my earlier conditioning? Like, where does this decision come from? Where did these thoughts come from? Are they mine? Were they mom's, my dad's? Were they my family's? Were they, the church I went to? Did they come from a teacher? Where do they come from? Where's this being motivated from? And most people do not know what their values are. Mm-hmm. Right, their own, because their values had been established by television commercials, by teachers, by peers, by friends. 14-year-olds, I work with teenagers, and oh man, do they struggle with this because they're trying to be accepted and loved, and so they get so lost trying to get the approval of others and be what others think they think others think they should be. They don't even know.
That is interesting. I wonder, can you give us an example where you've had that thought about, okay, where does this decision come from? Where you've gone through the process of peeling back?
Well, when I found my life's work, when I went to that free introductory evening and they used me as the volunteer to demonstrate how they can find those hidden beliefs in the unconscious mind. When I left there that night, I knew it was my calling. I didn't have a struggle about that. But what happened was I started getting all the feedback from all the people, like literally everyone in my world going, you really think you're going to make a living at that? I mean, you need to get a real job. And what happened for me is I had such a knowing, I'm going to talk about this in two ways. I had such a knowing that it did not matter what people said. I knew they didn't have my experience of knowing. And it was the first time in my life, I kid you not, Valerie, the first time in my life, I trusted my inner knowing over the voice of others. Had they had that conversation with me a day before my experience, if I had said, I'm going to be doing this, they could have talked me out of it because I didn't have my own experience of knowing, right? Mm-hmm. There have been many times in my life, like particularly in intimate relationships, personal, like with a boyfriend or what, a husband or whatever, that it's very difficult because, I'm a peacemaker. Peace is my number one value. It's just it. Peace. It's about peace. So I have made lots of mistakes, not really learning experiences, but we'll just call them mistakes, where I went against my peaceful nature to try to keep peace in the relationship. Mm-hmm. And went against what I knew to be true. And I can't give you specifics. There are like thousands of them, but there's just lots of them, where I knew in my heart what was true for me and what was best, but to keep the peace, which was really not peace, it's just, right? Mm-hmm. To manage things, I would go along with them. I mean, it's simple things like I would say, people go, well, where do you want to eat? Oh, it doesn't matter. Well, it did matter. I had a certain way I wanted to eat. So I would end up eating something that was way off of how I wanted to eat. It does matter. And it didn't mean that I need to get my way, but it's okay to speak up and say, well, excuse me, I'm getting a message on my phone here. It's about honoring our truth. Mm.
Yeah.
And I could say, I really would like a salad, and they're wanting to go have pizza. Well, I might end up going and have pizza, but I have the right to say, I'd really love a salad.
And I think, especially women, right? I think we do have a tendency, or part of our makeup is to be pleasing to other people,
Yes.
right? To
Yes.
please others, to make sure people are satisfied, that people are happy. And some of us.
But we have to talk about why we do that, right?
Yeah.
Why do we do that? Because it all comes down to we want to be loved and accepted.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Very true.
So the more I've come to an awareness of self-love, the less I do those old behaviors.
Ah, interesting.
Because I don't need people to love me. I like it, they love me. And I love to love, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm okay over here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's interesting, because part of what we, I think, struggle with sometimes, and I would imagine as a human being, the human experience is to belong, right? To be in community
Yes.
with others, especially
Yes.
those that we've either selected through marriage, or those that have been, that raised us, people who have been put into our lives because they're family, that there's some level of acceptance and belonging that we require in order to thrive as human beings. And so I think innately we're compelled to want to make sure that people around us are at least seeing us in a positive light. But you brought up something. I want to go back to what you said about knowing through, like, being aware of your breath and the sensations.
Yeah.
And then this time when we're looking at maybe ending some things in life or starting something new, I'm curious about, how does one see and know, like, have that internal experience of knowing when it's time to start something or when it's time to end something? Like, what should people be paying attention to?
Well, I'm actually going through something like that right now in my life. And I did have an ending in my life this year that was pretty significant. And, for me, it started having an awareness or a thought about that something I'm considering, and it nags at you. It won't go away. Right? It just keeps, like, there's this, like, I'm soon going to be entering my 6th decade, and, or maybe it'll be my 7th decade. Yeah, I guess when you're 10 years old, you've already lived a decade. So, right. Entering my 7th decade. And where was I going with that? I kind of got a little distracted. What did you just ask me? Ask that question again.
Talking about knowing when to start, when to end, Oh,
yeah. Okay. So, I'm looking at, okay, I've done this work for 30 years. It's, if I were to die tomorrow, and hopefully I don't, right? I would love to leave this methodology and technology and things I've learned and accumulated over the years with people and pass it on. I think it's helped a lot of people. Why can't it continue to help people beyond? So there's been this nagging thing. It's really time to really share this and teach this to other people. And it will not leave me alone.
When you say it won't leave you alone, give us an example of when it shows up, how it shows up.
It shows up every day. It shows up as, I really need to get that course started. I really need to get it. I need to write it. I need to put all the stuff together, like take action on it. And which is what I'm going to be doing next year. Actually, I'm going to start it at a holiday vacation over Christmas, but starting putting all the materials together because it won't go away. It's been there for a long time. I actually embarrassed to say years. But it's now time, because now I'm about to enter a new decade. And it's like, wow, I look back on that. I'm going, wow, I'm going to be 60. I know you're not supposed to tell your age, but whatever. Someone else's rule, right? Is that I really, at that age, you look at like, well, how many years do I have left? I mean, hopefully a few decades, but we don't know. Mm-hmm. And so it's just time to get serious and get on with it and take action. It can be up here nagging me forever. But until I take action, it's not going to happen. And that nag will not go away. I've had other things I don't remember right now that have nagged me. And until I took the action, it won't stop. And we probably have little bitty things in our life, like I call that a big thing, but little things in our life, like, you really should go sugar-free. Maybe there's that little nagging voice. It's like, take the sugar out of your diet. And it goes on for years and months or years without really addressing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or making that phone call, or starting or stopping some behavior.
Yes.
That is, I think, one of the things that we all probably have, those nagging thoughts. But what was it that kept you? What do you think the resistance was about?
I think there were several things. one, it's a very vulnerable thing. I plan on doing in ways I've not done it before, because mostly I've taught it in live workshops, and I plan on doing a lot of online stuff. I appreciate the opportunity to get to be on Facebook Live today. I've only done a few of these because I plan on doing a lot of that. So there's a whole vulnerability piece, and I've really, really been chipping away at undoing perfectionism, that need to, get it right. It's really robbed me of much of my life. And it's now time to just jump out there, make mistakes, fall on my face, make a fool of myself, pick myself up, brush my knees, and keep on going. I think it's been a lot of that. And there were some other personal things going on in my life for some time that really needed to get handled and resolved. It was just taking too much energy and time and focus. And until I could get that handled, it just made it really, really difficult, because I see, a full-time schedule of clients, and then I have a life, and then I have my passion of sharing and helping others. And in order to do, I would put, my priority was these clients that I'm seeing. I love them with my whole heart, and I want phenomenal results, and I need to be present and rested and energized and present with them in order to get those results. So the way everything going on in my life, it's like, my basket was full. You can't put more in one in. And so I had to resolve something, remove some things from a basket to make room for this.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It does. But I can also see that for many of us, starting something new does require not only reviewing to see whether or not there's room and time for it, but also, like you said, if we have some expectations of how it should go or what it should look like before we actually start, that could also be a hindrance, right? It has to be just so.
It could be an excuse. Absolutely. It could be. And I've had those excuses. And to give myself credit, I actually have been working towards it a lot. Learning technology. I didn't learn, in just the last 10 years, and really the last 3 years, I went, I'm going to learn technology. I'm going to stop blocking myself and limiting myself by saying I don't know technology. That's a ridiculous excuse. Just learn it. My brain still learns. Okay. So I didn't grow up with computers. Doesn't matter. Get over it, LaRue. Right. And so there was a lot of that. So I've been studying marketing and the last year I spent in Inspired Living Academy, which teaches you all about being on video and how to market with video. So I actually have been working towards it. I just haven't been delivering the course because I felt like I couldn't do everything. There are only so many hours in a day. Right. and do it effectively and do it well. Well, I've gotten some things handled in my life this year, and there's space in my basket for my legacy project. And so, you're right, Valerie. A lot of those are excuses. Many of them, probably 90% of the stuff we tell ourselves is an excuse. Like mine was the big one, technology.
And I didn't say excuse, but I did say that resistance that shows up sometimes is it could be our out, right? And it could be something that we do need to handle, because you also said having this idea of it being perfect, that there's this need to have things go a certain way, look a certain way, for people to respond to it a certain way. Like all of those things. I know for me, and to be honest, I know half the time I love coming up with ideas. You and I have sit and brainstorm forever, but many of the ideas are not founded on anything other than just like, oh, that would be kind of cool. There's no research involved. There's no, have I done this before? Who's done it? How does it work? Somebody did it. I'm going to try it. Yeah. And I know that there have been times when I have tried some things that I'm like, why did I even waste my time doing it? I should have probably looked into it. So I get what you're saying. Sometimes starting for some of us might be, I want to get it just right before I start. Some of us start without really putting forth the due diligence that sometimes is needed. Yeah. And that could also be a way to sabotage in some cases, to do something
exactly.
So
I think some of my best lessons is jumping in, not researching, doing something and learning firsthand. I'm a firsthand learner. It's great to learn from others, but and my perfectionism has kept me from jumping in a lot. But really my best learning is getting in the trenches and falling down and getting up and learning from it.
I wonder what's the worst that we imagine happens from starting something.
I don't know what it is for others. I only know for myself, it was a tremendous fear of shame and humiliation.
Really? Tell you more
Fear
about
that Well, I was raised in a very shame-based culture. I mean, my mother used to say, and I, no problem. I have no issues with my mom. My mom and dad have passed, and I feel like I healed my stuff with them before they died. And so it was only love there, for them when I speak. But my mother grew up in a shame-based family and shame-based religion. And she used to say to me, shame on you, shame on you. And so there was a lot of that. There was a lot of shame, just a lot of shame in my childhood. And so until I've done some healing around that, I was really afraid to put myself out there or afraid to try things because I was afraid of shame and humiliation. And go ahead. Well, it's just time to get over it. It's just be willing to be shamed and humiliated. It may not even happen. You get over it. Shame's a feeling. Humiliation's a feeling. So you're humiliated. People say horrible things about you or they talk about you. Well, guess what? That's an opportunity for growth. Now, this is big talk right now. I don't mean it wouldn't be painful if it happened, right? But I mean, it's easy to say it, right? But it's like shame is a feeling. Humiliation is a feeling. What people think about us creates a feeling. We can get over those feelings. We are the creator of our feelings and we can change them. It all comes back to that. We have the power.
We are the creator of our feelings.
Yeah.
What?
You don't create my feelings. You can say things that I unconsciously or consciously generate a feeling from what you say, but you don't generate my feelings for me. I do.
Very true. When you think shame, this is really fascinating. I would just sort of unpack this a little bit. So when you think of the word shame and humiliation, what exactly does that feeling produce? Because I can imagine that there's something that has us want to pull back so far from anything that will create or cause us to feel shame and humiliation. But what is it about those two feelings that we're avoiding, you think?
Well, that's a really good question.
I only ask good questions.
I know, that's really true. You're actually a very good interviewer. Yeah. Yeah. And I loved our day of talking because you asked these kind of questions. Yeah, you're perfect for this. This is good. So what is it about it? Yeah, why? I've asked myself that question. Why do we recoil from that so much?
Yeah.
I don't know that I have an answer to that. I know for me, if it's like, we're either expanded or contracted or somewhere in between, and for me, shame is one of those contracted things, where, they used to say, bow your head in shame, right? You don't look up, you're right. Well, I don't know. I think we all want to be loved. We all want to be seen as valuable humans because we are. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah.
And, I have all kinds of beliefs and, there's some scientific proof to some of them. Some maybe there is, and maybe I don't know about it, and some not. But, I think that, and there is scientific proof on this, is that we have, genetic memories as well, memories in our cells, in our DNA, that from eons back or decades back, trying to say generations back, that also is within our being that we may not have conscious access to. And there may be a lot of shame back there that hasn't been dealt with by our ancestors that needs to be healed. Some people would say it's past life stuff, hey, I'm open to that too, that this memory on a soul level that has not been dealt with. So I think it's again, multifaceted,
And it's interesting because you said you recognize your mother also held some shame. She came from a shame-based culture and upbringing, and that was something, like you said, perhaps not healed through that generation that then was brought in, touched yours.
Yeah, and then religion reinforced it. Like, you should be ashamed. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I heard that. You should be ashamed of yourself.
I wonder if it points back to what we were talking about with, that need to feel loved, right? But I think the need to belong, the need to be accepted.
Yeah.
All of those things. Shame actually is telling someone, if in that case, shame on you, is that you don't belong. You're not accepted here. You're not loved for
Yes.
what you did or who you are or how you are.
And you could be an outcast from the tribe, an outcast from belonging, right? If we're kicked out of the tribe, we don't belong. That's probably the deepest pain.
It absolutely can. It can be. And I say can be because like you said, I think when we get that, shame and humiliation is an emotion that is optional, right? In essence, optional. We choose to accept the weight of it or the implications of it in a literal way, like, oh my goodness, I should not show my face in public again, or there's just something around that that's so diminishing, that's so demeaning that I don't accept it, right?
Yeah.
I don't take that on. So I wonder how we choose. And I said this to you before, you have a really high set point for joy, right? You're, at least in my experience of you, you're the type of personality that would find the sunny side, right? Or find
I do. I look for it. Yes, I do.
So I'm curious about what it took to pull away and just decide that these are just emotions. I don't necessarily choose to believe those or choose to take those on. How did you do that?
Part of that was in my healing journey, you know, when I had the suicidal thing and then I found a way to heal myself. Once I had a few healing sessions, I was changing inside and I went, oh my God, I can do something about these feelings. I do not have to exist with this depression and these fears, and I don't have to live that way. And I didn't know it until I experienced freedom from it after a couple of sessions. Like, oh my God, something's different inside me. Like I feel differently. I am not destined and doomed to a life of shame and fear and depression. I can do something about it. And it's kind of, I call it the I can factor. It's like that moment where you realize I can change. I can be different. I can feel different. And I have the power. I can do it.
Can you articulate what that self-limiting belief was, or one of them that you felt that was really uprooted that made a difference for you?
I'm not wanted. I don't matter. It was in my first experience where at the free introductory evening, the woman said she was going to use applied kinesiology, or also known as muscle testing. I call it truth testing because we're really testing for what do you truly believe, right? And what's really true for you in your heart. And she said, she told me that my core limiting memory was when I was 2 years old, and I actually had the memory. It popped into my awareness, and it felt like I was a 2-year-old, like I was right back in the kitchen with my mother again. And ask your question again, because I was setting up my answer and forgot your question. Ask the question.
And
again.
I was so absorbed by your answer that I forgot. No.
Forgot the question.
No, I think it was really about what that limiting belief was, that if you remember one.
Yeah, that I don't matter. Yeah, so it was my first memory that I recalled during my healing process with my mother, where I was 2 years old. I had made something for her. She was washing dishes. It's an innocent thing. It happens every day in probably households across America, around the world. My mother didn't mean any harm. Okay, it was my perception of what happened, and I made something for my mom. I like scribbled some crayons on paper or whatever, and made her some artwork and handed it to her, like, Mommy, look what I made for you, and she didn't look at it, and I made it mean, and like, oh, it's not, and it wasn't with words, it was a feeling. What I have to offer, my mother doesn't want. She doesn't want to connect with me. I don't matter. There was more to the story, but I had many experiences like that. And then I would obviously label them, because now I have that original belief in there. I would look through that filter at my mom. I made my mom the enemy for the first 30 years of my life. Like, she doesn't love me. She doesn't want me. That's what I made it mean. Wow. And it was a 2-year-old. And I'm telling you, people, we have to go back and find those beliefs and rework them, let them go, because we will look through those filters and we will limit our lives as a result of them. If I go through life in like the 30 years of my life with the belief I don't matter, guess what? I'm not going to matter. Yeah.
We find a way to really prove whatever that belief is to be true.
Exactly.
I think, was it Michael Beckwith? I heard him say something like, belief is what we know to be true without any evidence.
That's so good.
So we don't need any evidence, including this experience you had with your mom. None of it has to be true when we believe something.
Yeah. Yeah. I just believe my own thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that terrible?
But we do it. We do it.
We do. It's so insidious. It's so insidious. I remember I went to a Tony Robbins event years and years ago. Well, years and years, like 4 years ago. I'm like in my past. And he had an exercise where we had to write down what, self-limiting beliefs we had. And I'm like, self-limiting beliefs? What? And it was hard to really get into there because they're so plastered to our being.
Yes.
That we hardly ever take them out. Like you said, we are not aware of our values often. We're not able to always articulate them. So can you imagine that being able to articulate a belief beyond like a judgment of something, beyond having an assessment, but something that's been programmed? And I remember the belief I had was I was too strong and independent to be in a good relationship.
Wow.
That's the belief I had because I, over the years heard, oh, you're too strong and independent. You know what man will be able to really contribute to you from whoever I villainized, right? I vilified for having that whether they said it or whether it was implied or I interpreted, which is probably what happened 99% of the time at my interpretation. And I remember just seeing that moment when I had actually extracted the belief from my consciousness, and I thought, oh, that's why I have accepted or I've allowed or I haven't or I have, like all these different relationships and all these different, I remember just looking back, it was like a film that just kind of flashed in front of my eyes of all the decisions that I had made because that belief had been in place. And I just decided, I accepted it. I thought this is the way things were, that I had all these different experiences like, oh, see, there it is. Of course. It's
Yeah. And so it looks like it's the external world looks like it's really the problems out there. Yeah. Right. But it's really the belief that's causing you to see and create and experience the world out there. Absolutely. But and for me, that was the hardest thing, is shifting from it looking like life was happening out there to life is happening in here. And what's going on in here, I'm looking through a filter at life and seeing my beliefs here out there.
Okay, you got to say that again and slowly with pictures. I don't know
if I can, so let me try again, is that I used to believe that life happened out there. Yes. What I saw with my eyes out there. And then I had this awareness that life is happening in here. It's happening through my beliefs. And these beliefs create a filter, like glasses, that I look through, right? And I look out through these lens of my beliefs. And that's what I see and I experience out there. Mm-hmm. Like I remember a day a few years ago, not that long ago, not that long ago, we're both saying long.
Time is an abstract construct.
Exactly. It's made up by man anyway. It doesn't exist. It's made up by man. But I remember, listening to the news. I rarely listen to the news, but God, now I know why, because I was listening to the news and all these horrific things in the world, just horrible. And I grew up with, my mom saying, oh, it's really sad raising kids in this day and age. Well, Mom, fast forward 50 years, but anyway, but it's like the world is unsafe. All these horrible things happen. And I just had this epiphany 5 or 6 years ago, standing in my window, bedroom window that looked out at the front of the house down the street. And I went, all I see is peace. I don't see a bad world. Like there's just, a person on the sidewalk taking their morning walk, walking their dog, and, no houses are going up in fire. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen, but it's like, what am I afraid of? Yes, stuff happens in the world, but my reality right here, right now is nothing but peace around me in my hood. That's it.
And I think that goes back to what we're talking about, that beliefs don't have to be proven by evidence. We have to have no evidence whatsoever to believe something, which is why it's so treacherous for us to hold something so tightly, or to be so attached to why or how things happen. And yes, I love what you said, that we do often get confused. And I'm going to call it confusion, because I want to be really generous with ourselves. Yeah. Confused that life does happen out here, what people say, what people do, how traffic moves, what happens on the news, all the things that surround us that we interact with, that interact with us, somehow that's the truth. And when in reality, what you're really pointing to is that everything that comes in through, right? I think they talked about this and how the eyes work. The eye is such a beautiful feature of humanity, because all it does is take all these snapshots of everything, things that we conceive perceptibly or things that we imply, all that stuff is interpreted.
Yes.
And what you're saying is everything that we might see and hear, right? The five senses might experience, it's actually being processed somewhere else. And then when we have the processing, depending on what kind of programming we put in there,
that's right,
it will be interpreted in one way or another.
That's right.
And unfortunately, sometimes the programming that we have, those beliefs that we've adopted, that we haven't examined, that we haven't questioned, that we have just blindly accepted as truth, they get in the way of us having the most optimal experience. You know, I always say, if we're going to make up a story about something, at least make up one that makes, that empowers me, that empowers me, that makes me feel good about life and people. Like you said, being able to look at it and go, there's absolutely nothing wrong going out there. Everything is in peace, and beautiful. Why would I believe something different?
That's exactly right. Yes, exactly. And I can have this thought that someone's listening to this or will listen to this and thinking, but LaRue, this horrible thing did happen. Well, we're not saying it didn't happen. Things happen in my life, okay, that I'd prefer not to happen, right? But what I'm talking about is, what am I making that thing mean that happened?
Yes.
See, what does it mean to me that he treated me that way, or she said that, or, there was a car accident, or what am I making it mean? That's the level we're talking about here. We're not saying that stuff doesn't happen out there.
Yes. Is that 2-year-old, like you said. And unfortunately, when we're children, we do make up a lot of stories. We interpret things because our brains are really limited in knowledge and scope. Sometimes we do go in directions that are not that empowering to us.
And they're very immature. And yet, as adults, we're making decisions sometimes from those decisions we made and beliefs we created at 1, 2, and 3 years old.
So how does one question beliefs, though? We're talking about something that's so stuck on, it's like a film over
and it's so deep we don't even know it's there. It's just reality to us, right? Yeah.
How does one begin to peel that back, to question it?
Well, number one, it is to just ask the question, where does this belief come from? You may not even have the answer, but it starts with awareness. Okay, this thing happened. What am I making it mean? What did I make it mean? What am I believing about this? And then where does that belief come from? And just start to ask and look. You may not have an answer. You may not know. You might know immediately. Go, oh, my dad believed that. Oh, my aunt. Oh, I remember that day my aunt said whatever. Right? You may. So you start with the inquiry. Where does it come from? And there are many ways to get to beliefs. There's all kinds of methodologies out there these days. Some people love to journal. They can sometimes just journaling and writing about things. It'll get you into your body and out of your head, and things will slip out through your pen on the paper. Mm-hmm. I've had many aha moments like, whoa, really? Right? It just plops right out of you. Meditation. Dreams. I love to access my unconscious mind just as I'm going to sleep at night. If I have a problem or a dilemma or whatever, I will ask my unconscious mind, and just before I dip into that sleep state, it'll pop into my awareness.
Really? Okay. Mm-hmm. So you ask your unconscious mind, you literally have some question, like an inquiry of some sort, or you write this down somewhere, and then
well, because my brain is looking for it. We have this thing in the brain called the reticular activating system, and it filters for it. And it's like there's billions of bits of data around us right here in this moment. Yet our reticular activating system, also called RAS for short, is filtering out all that other data. There's Wi-Fi waves going, the neighbors are on the internet, all that is our unconscious mind can pick up on, but we need to be able to focus. Yeah. And so the RAS right now, you and I, we're looking at each other on the screen and we're talking, and the rest of the world has gone away. right? We're focused because the RAS does that. So when I propose a question, I'm very intentional about it. I know the unconscious mind has my answers. I know it knows this stuff, and it is willing to talk. I've learned that over the years through my dreams and journals, that it just wants you to ask it. You know, and if you have a belief that you can't get in there and it won't communicate, well, guess what you're going to experience? You're not going to get any data from your unconscious mind. And you're not going to have dreams if that's your belief. But I believe, and I know that I can gather data from my unconscious. It's all in there. Because, you know, when we're little kids, our brain in our unconscious mind is just like a video camera, and it's videoing everything, and it's going, and it's all in there. It's all in there. So I will go to sleep with an intention. I'm going to get an answer to this question. Yeah, if you write that question down, but you don't have an intention of getting an answer, good luck. Okay. Intention is everything. It's everything. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's, do you intend? Do you mean it? Do you mean it? So I'll write down my question, and then I'll go to sleep. And then most of the time, sometimes not, but most of the time, it will pop into my awareness. So like, I'm going to share something really personal. Okay. And I have no idea who's watching and who will see this, but I have to share because it really makes a point. And so I'm willing to be vulnerable for your benefit, right? Is not just yours, Valerie, but I mean anyone listening, is that I think I shared this with you. I realized I've had 3 long-term relationships and then 1 short-term relationship. These are significant relationships, not just someone I dated for a year or time, but they had profound impacts in my life. And as I looked back earlier in this year, I realized none of those men were happy. They were all depressed on some level, either when I was with them or after I was with them, like they had some level of depression. And I went, okay, well, what is it in my unconscious? What did I believe? What's in there that caused me to be attracted to men like that? You know, Dr. Harville Hendricks, who wrote the book, Getting the Love You Want, says that our unconscious mind is filtering for the people who most match our wounds in childhood, so we get an opportunity to heal them. And so after having had these 4 relationships with people that have been depressed, I started asking myself, like, what is it in me? And I had this memory one day. I'd actually never forgotten the memory, but I didn't know its impact. And I was 3 years old. I was the last of 6 kids, and I was with my sweet dad. I loved my dad. And we had been somewhere together, and we pulled up in front of the house. And I don't know, maybe he and Mom had a falling out. I don't know what was going on with him, but he was very sad. Not that he looked sad, but he said to me before we got out of the car, we pulled up in the drive, he turned the key off. I can still remember it. And he said, your mom's turned all the other kids against me, but you've all I've got left. I don't know what I would do if I lost you. It would just break my heart. And in that moment, I bonded with my father and I turned against my mom. Now, I know that was not his intention, right? I know his intention was, you're the only one I have the real deep connect, but because he believed, whether it was true or not, that Mom turned the kids against him. I don't even know that was true, right? Mm-hmm. That was his experience. That's what he believed. And I bonded with my father. So I went through life trying to find men because I felt his sadness. I felt his sadness. And I bonded with men who I felt their sadness. Wow. Unconsciously.
Ooh.
I met men that were happy, successful. I mean, like, I could have lived a grand life, okay? They were so boring. Yeah, you know why they were boring? Because they didn't match my wound that needed healing.
Wow.
But I'll never have to do that ever again, because now I know.
Now you know. You're able to take that from the unconscious to the conscious.
Trying to save my daddy. I've been trying to save my daddy and make him happy all these years.
For all those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
We do.
Thank you. That was a bit vulnerable for me to share because I don't know, family could hear this, and I hope they know it's well-intentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think you're right. Most of us are, what is it that we have a hole in our heart the size of the person that we want to, the relationship that we want to heal. And so we keep trying to fit. Hey, there's a hole there. There's a wound. Who can I find that will help heal or complete that? And unfortunately, most of the time is because is something that will be completely disempowering to us and to the other person. We just, for some reason, are not able to play anything else out until we're able to see that that's a wound, and
That's
there's
right.
other ways to heal a wound. You know, we may not, the scar tissue that's there is not sufficient. We need to go back and actually do whatever the deep work is.
Yeah, exactly, Valerie. And then what happens is that when relationships end or someone leaves us and our heart is broken, what we're experiencing is our original wounding. It looks like it's about the person that just left us. It's triggering the deep wound that we've not been in touch with. That's the healing, and that's the opportunity.
That's the opportunity. Oh, wow.
And I know, I don't want to end. And here's the thing I've noticed over my relationships as I've healed more and more. When those relationships end, there's less and less sadness in me because I've healed so much. I don't feel incomplete without these people, right? I'm whole and complete on my own. It doesn't mean I don't have compassion for them or whatever, but there's not that empty, I don't have that empty gaping hole that I need to go fill with someone else right away.
I absolutely understand that. That's so interesting that, we do make these decisions. I mean, all the things that we've said so far today have been, we have some sort of belief, we have some sort of value that we use to filter out information, we filter out experiences, we give them some sort of meaning, definition, we give them an impact, they impact us emotionally, and then that forms a film that begins to impact, and film in a filter that has us impact all these different areas of life that when examined could be sometimes catastrophic, right? At best, uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And it sounds like really the work that one needs to do is to really look inward, right? Everything that happens out here is just for contrast. It's just to kind of
so we can
us.
see what's in here, right? So we can see.
So we can see. Oh, love that. Love. So tell us, just as we wrap up, what kind of work do you do with your clients? So people who are listening want to do some of that type of work with you. Well,
if people feel stuck or blocked, it's always inside. It doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside. It's an internal thing. And I can help people find that really quickly. We can find out what's really going on and what you're really blocked very quickly, like sometimes in seconds, okay? And then there's the work to heal it, and we start that right in their first session. Sometimes there's going to be a series of sessions, sometimes one, but usually a series to really, because there are several memories and beliefs in there, in different aspects and different angles to them. And we just want to do a really thorough job so that you can transform it and be done with it finally and forever.
Oh, nice. And putting you a little bit on the spot here, because you've been working so much and so hard over the past year to break through the resistance to putting your course, when or what can we expect from you next year?
Well, thank you for that. I'm looking at late winter, early spring.
Okay, 2020, late winter, early spring 2020 for this course.
Yes, I'm diving into it.
Can you give us a heads up or an indication of what kind of course it is, or who is it for?
Well, the course is training people. I have two real gifts. And I basically, my work is with accessing intuitive intelligence, the innate wisdom within us. Valerie, did you know your heart beats over 4,000 times an hour? Like the hour we've been together, your heart has beat on average 4,000 times. How many times did you tell your heart to beat?
Not a single time.
Right. And by this time tomorrow, it would have beat 97,000 times. And this time a year from now, 35 million times. And not once do you tell your heart to beat. There's an intelligence within us that we have direct access to. And then the technology and methodology that I use directly accesses that very same intelligence that makes your heart beat. And it can talk to us. And I use that to go, and it'll tell us what the beliefs are, what the unconscious beliefs are. We don't have to guess. My tagline is, "My guess when you can know." Go in and know what it is. And so I have to say the technology is profound, and the system I've put together of diagnostics is absolutely, for diagnosing beliefs, is just profound. And I'm going to teach life coaches and therapists, as I've done in the past, how to use this technology. If someone isn't a life coach, but they have a propensity for self-healing and self-help, and they dig it and love it, they could also be a real good candidate for this training. But it'll be a certification where they become a certified coach in what I call the EVOK method. It stands for evolutionary kinesiology.
EVOK. Ah,
And they can start their own business doing what I do.
very nice. Well,
Yeah.
good. Well, I'm glad that you found it now time to put your work out there and have it, like you said, it's a legacy that you're leaving behind for others. So really
Yeah,
excited to hear.
I did some estimation recently, and I've done over 50,000 sessions in 30 years.
Woo! Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a lot to share with people because I've learned, I had my initial learning and unlearning, in the healing that you're going through, people who will go through my training, there's going to be a lot of unlearning of old beliefs and things that don't serve them. Yeah. So over the years, I've learned a lot and I've unlearned a lot, but I've learned so much from my clients. It's been this 30 years of experience and over 50,000 sessions that has taken me and my work and knowledge to a whole new level. And I continue to learn every day.
Well, clearly, and I'm so glad that you had an opportunity to share with us some of the lessons that you've gotten over the past year. And I can see the profound impact that will have on those people who will not only work with you in the future, but that have been working with you as we. I think that's part of the work, right? For us in life is that it never quite ends. There's no ending. We talk about this being a starting over, but because it's literally, if we want to continue, even if we physically aren't here, it sounds like even as you talk about your parents, it's an opportunity to start over your relationship with them and heal whatever needs to be healed. There's always a renewal of the mind, of the body, of the soul as we continue to move through what we call life.
Indeed.
So grateful to have had you here this morning to share with us. Thank you so very much for all your wisdom, for your generosity of spirit, and also all the wonderful information that you shared about what you do and how you do it.
Valerie, thank you. It has been a joy. One of my favorite interviews ever. You are an amazing gift to this planet. Thank you for being you. Thank you for bringing your message. And I look forward to learning more about your work because I know we're going to be hanging out. And thank you. It's really an honor. Thank you. And I've just loved it so much.
Great. Thank you. The honor is all mine. Absolutely. As always, this is one of the things I look forward to every week is that we have this really mindful conversation. And I think you and I said this in the beginning, we set the intention that, and I want to let people know 50 episodes, right? So December 4th last year is when I had my first podcast.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive. 50 episodes.
50 episodes. And so it's been really interesting to learn and see how things have evolved. And one thing I wanted to let people know is that none of the conversations that I've had have been scripted. We have a little prep time in the beginning, really just to make sure that the technology is all aligned, but then most of the conversation really happens on the program. And it just really evolves. So I'm so thankful to you, LaRue, but then all the guests that I've had over the past year who have been so willing to come and play, because that's really what it looks like. They get, you get an opportunity to come on and play and have these really mindful conversations, these, conscious lifting conversations with me. And some of them have a profound impact. Some of them may not. I have no idea the impact they're having on others, but I'm just so grateful to have a platform to do so, that there's an audience that wants to know and see and hear and experience. And I can't imagine that this conversation will not have a profound impact on someone out there. That is my hope and wish.
That's my hope. Yes, for sure.
Yes.
Well, thank you
about that. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. Next week, so the next couple weeks, we're going to have some special guests. I'm not going to announce who they are quite yet because we're really wrapping up the year and looking at getting some of the more popular or the most interesting conversations back into getting them back out here to you, so you have an opportunity to recap and refresh some of your fan favorites. You'll see in the next couple of weeks. So December 10th, we'll have an episode. Likely it will be a different time, so keep on the lookout go to Time to Come Alive and register there if you're interested in getting an email to let you know who's coming up and what time we're going to have that particular show, as we're accommodating schedules. So thank you all so much for tuning in. Please do share this conversation on your social media. Share with the people in your life with whom you know that you need to have some of these conversations, because this is what I hope this prompts. There's more conversation with the people in your life that matter. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. See you next week.